Parents in California are furious, justifiably, after a middle school emails kids about joining a private chat room with adults as old as 25 for a freewheeling LGBTQ discussion. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Disgusted Dr. Duke Show. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we're talking to our international correspondent, Alex Newman, about a California mother who is pulling her kids out of public school after learning of a school-sponsored online LGBTQ hangout group that welcomes participants between the ages of 13 and 25 years old. Sounds perfectly normal, but we start with a look at the health of our republic from our very own Katie Petrick.
This week on Healthy Republic, we're tackling the 7 sins of the coronavirus and how our government officials actually look at us. So let's take a look. From New York to California, I'm about to take you on a tour of the lockdown landscape in what once was a freedom-loving country known as America. If you're like me and you value rights and liberties, well, this video will make your blood boil. So get ready for that, because I'm about to show you how government officials exploit sins and cast them upon us. Number 1, pride. We start in New York, the epicenter for all this coronavirus, and where in the city and in the state you are being watched. And you may be snitched on for not social distancing properly, because that's what New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio wants you to do.
When you see a crowd, when you see a line that's not distanced, when you see a supermarket that's too crowded, anything, you can report it right away so we can get help there to fix the problem. And now it's as simple as taking a photo. All you gotta do is take the photo and put the location with it, and bang, send a photo like this, and we will make sure that enforcement comes right away.
And bang, did he get some pictures.
It's my in a box. In a box,
the plan was half-cocked to begin with, so the hotline being inundated with pics of male genitalia made some sense. And now Mayor de Blasio has appointed his wife to head a coronavirus racial inequality task force, because nepotism is his calling card. But he is not alone in New York's Gestapo. Governor Andrew Cuomo says to all you complaining about wanting the economy to not collapse, and to those who have just lost their jobs because of all of this corona, well, just get an essential job. Duh.
Is there
you want to go, by the way,
right
you want to go to work? Go take a job as an essential worker. Do it tomorrow. Right? You're working.
I am.
You're an essential worker. So go take a job as an essential worker.
But the people aren't hiring because of the
No, there are
pandemic.
people hiring. You can get a job as an essential worker. So now you can go to work and you can be an essential worker and you're not going to kill anyone.
Oh yeah, it's just so easy. How about your job, Andrew? It's essential, but it sounds like they need someone to actually do that job and not dismiss real concerns of real workers. Moving on to number 2, greed. Now, anyone who wants to reopen the country has been accused of being selfish or greedy, but the deadly sin of greed is being committed by those who are ignoring the spiritual by not allowing churches to hold services, even in safe distance form. Congregants at Temple Baptist Church in Greenville, Mississippi were fined $500 per person for attending a drive-in Easter service, as in you are in your own car away from other people. The mayor claims they won't have to pay the fines, which is good because they shouldn't have even been given in the first place. It's gotten so extreme in some areas that Mendocino County in California has banned worship singing and use of wind instruments during a live stream because of the projected droplets. They are already limited to 4 people. Unless you're spitting at people, why oh why must you have this? All of the edicts were happening during the Christian church's most holy day of Easter and with the lead up to Ramadan for Muslims. Now guess who out of those 2 groups who is allowed to worship? Back to New York, where in Syracuse, a mosque is open for worship 5 times per day. And then back to de Blasio.
But for folks who need halal meals, there will be 32 of those DOE sites in particular focused where there are large Muslim communities. 400,000 meals available. Another 100,000 will be distributed through partnerships with community-based organizations, food pantries, soup kitchens. So over 500,000 meals will be distributed during Ramadan.
On to number 3, sloth. You can't go anywhere. You have to remain in your homes under lock and key. And if you dare go to a park, you'll be arrested, as was with one mother in Idaho.
Her kids are here. Her kids are here. What is going to happen? Who's got her kids?
This makes no sense.
Where are your kids? This is so wrong.
So we can congregate in the grass, but the kids can't play on the playground? As a person, does this make sense to you? As a person, not as a police officer, as a person, does this make sense to you?
Arrests are happening everywhere across the country.
Police Chief Alfonso Morales said arrests had already been made.
We have a total of 107 arrests related to Statute 252 for those that are violating the law relating to health.
Wisconsin has closed everything, too, as if us in the north haven't been stuck indoors for months and need some fresh air. But continuing on to number 4, wrath.
A popular Orange County skate park is now covered in sand. The city of San Clemente made the move to discourage skaters from using the park during social distancing. But the nonprofit that manages the park told the OC Register the city made the move without telling them first.
Why would any government official in California consider telling the people who manage the park? Instead, let's just get 37 tons of sand and fill in the park, all on the taxpayer's dime. I'm just pleased the skaters came back, took the sand out of the skate park to resume the perfectly healthy physical activity in the wide open air. But moving on to number 5, envy. Oh, Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, she's all envy. She's been trying to get Joe Biden's attention to be his VP pick, so she's been on Trevor Noah spouting off. In the state of Michigan, you can't plant any food because you can't get the seeds to plant it, but you can still get your abortion. That's what Whitmer deems essential. And then there's this.
In World War II, there weren't people lining up at the Capitol to protest the fact that they had to drop everything they were doing and build planes or tanks or to ration food. They rolled up their sleeves and they got to work.
Let me say this slowly. They were fighting to keep the rights within their nation. You, the government, are taking the rights. Know the difference. For number 6, we have gluttony. Just a state away from Michigan is Ohio, where an Amish barn party was broken up. The Amish like to be left alone for their simpler times, but they are not immune to tyranny. One person was arrested after someone called 911 to report the violation of a gathering. Even the Amish are being taken to the screws, and they are the ones who actually know how to use them. Finally is number 7, lust. And we are hitting Chicago, where Mayor Lori Lightfoot says you must follow the rules. But I'll just go get my hair done.
I'm out in the public eye, and I'm a person who I take my personal hygiene very seriously. As I said, I felt like I needed to have a haircut. I'm not able to do that myself, and so I got a haircut.
Oh, no, she didn't. Don Lemon, what do you think?
And those people are out there complaining because they don't have haircuts? Who the hell do you think you are? And if you're so upset about it, you should be mad at the president because he's the one that's supposed to help your small businesses.
Obviously, he wasn't talking about Chicago's mayor. He's in the public eye too, so all for me and none for thee. If you go back and actually look at the 7 deadly sins, gluttony, lust, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, and pride, and then you think of each government official from this video, you'll find the truth. Most of us just want common sense approach, but the responses have become the excess that makes up the sin. And these officials can't see that because they believe in themselves as their own God, so why would they? I hope you continue to think for yourself, use common sense, and know the one true God. And until next time, stay healthy, America.
Time now to bring in Alex Newman, our international correspondent. Alex, thanks for joining us today at the Dr. Duke Show.
Thanks so much for having me, Duke. Always a pleasure.
Well, for Freedom Project Media and for the Dr. Duke Show, you've written another great article about an outrage in California. I know. It seems unbelievable that California would have an outrage in education when their entire system of education is outrageous. But this is unique. we have a situation in California where even though the kids aren't in school right now, even though the kids are on lockdown at home in quarantine, the public schools are still trying to set up LGBTQ hookup meetings online for kids between the ages of 13 and not kids anymore 25. This is outrageous. Talk about the story for us, Alex.
It really is incredible, Duke. It's just, it blows the mind, and yet we're so used to it now. So you have a concerned mother who posted this online. She said the school district had emailed her middle school child promoting this LGBTQ plus youth hangout where young children, as young as 13 years old, could interact with older homosexuals and transgenders in their 20s, in their mid-20s. And if you look at the invitation, if you go look up this organization, what you find is that they specialize in connecting these LGBT youth. They provide safe sex materials and supplies, they say. And it's tax funded and very, very nefarious. In fact, underneath the comment that was posted on Facebook, you just had dozens of commenters saying, "Hey, this sounds like a pedophile grooming operation. What in the world?" And I think they're right to be very suspicious.
Yeah, when did we get to the point, Alex, that heterosexuality is now considered heteronormativity? Typical heterosexual relationships, which are the building block of biology and of human culture and of religious faith, they are now toxic and discriminatory. But we're actually setting up online hookup dates for middle school kids. When did we, in the public schools, become so adamant that heterosexuality was exclusive? And now a situation where, because of that exclusivity, we have to find ways to literally plug middle schoolers and 25-year-old adults together to share their sexuality.
It's a terrifying prospect, Duke. And what's even more terrifying is how quickly this happened. You know, even 10 years ago, this would have caused riots. This would have had people out in the streets at the school board meeting with the tar and feathers, ready to take these people down. And it just happened so quickly. And that's what I challenge parents. Think about what has happened just in the last 5 years. Now imagine what's coming in the next 5 years if we continue to tolerate this. And granted, I think the people who have been running the education system for decades, actually for generations, have had these types of objectives in mind over the long term. Now we're seeing the culmination of that. It's coming fast, it's coming furious, it's going to get more and more crazy unless and until parents put a stop to it.
Yeah, many things you and I have pointed out over the last long decade where we've seen education really get much worse. It's because the stone is rolling downhill now, right? We're in a situation where progressives own every aspect of education. California in particular has basically no Republican, no conservative legislature whatsoever. Everything is rubber stamped. There is no real force in California politically to fight back against this. And so we find ourselves in a situation where the left is moving 100 miles an hour down the path of their agenda. We've got 30 seconds before we have to take a break, Alex. Give us a quick comment on how what's happening in California is heading to a school near you.
Yeah, it's already happening, Duke. I just traveled the country last year, went to some of the most conservative states in the union, and teachers and school employees and parents said this same stuff is in our school here. This is a national problem, Duke.
It's a national crisis, and what we're seeing is that the parents are being shut out. What really gets me is, as bad as this is, I can't get past the fact that you have school officials texting and contacting, emailing middle school kids. We'll be right back after the break to finish this conversation. Hey, back with Alex Newman at the Dr. Duke Show. Alex, we've been talking about this outrageous story in California where you actually have school officials in the time of lockdown emailing middle school kids to get online with adult transgender and homosexual people for a closed meeting that parents can't sit in on. This is pretty staggering, but as you and I both know, California has a history of this and much worse. Talk about what's happening in California, some of the outrageous things that are being done to California school kids.
That's right, dude. This private web hangout for child and adult homosexuals and transgenders is just the latest example of this insanity. But we've been covering at Freedom Project Media, at my blog, The Newman Report there. We've been covering this insanity for many years now. And just last year, we broke a really, really important story. There was a school district in Southern California. We got it on video. The Informed Parents of California sent us the video. And we found out that the school administrators, the superintendent of curricula, was promoting this idea that child rape, right? In ancient Greece, grown men used to have sex with young boys, and they were promoting the idea, the superintendent of curricula, that this was a different sexual orientation that has existed throughout history, and so that's why we have to teach it to your children. We've got photos of classrooms in California where they're talking about pedophilia as a sexual orientation. We've got mandatory LGBT history lessons in California and several other states now where they teach the children to glorify this child rapist, Harvey Milk, who was, the first openly elected homosexual and also a predator who was preying on children, some of whom went to commit suicide after the abuse they endured at this man's hands. It is crazy. It is out of control. There's no opt-out for all this. And, parents now are in despair. As parents realize what's going on here, they're just losing it, and rightfully so.
You mentioned Harvey Milk and the revision of his history. He was a child rapist, literally a child rapist, Harvey Milk. We now have a Navy ship commissioned with his name on it, and it gives all new meaning to the village peoples in the Navy, right? How campy can you get? But it's even more than this, Alex. I mean, talk about some of the legislation that California, actual laws that California is trying to pass vis-a-vis this kind of behavior.
Yeah, thanks, Duke. And earlier this year, we reported on a piece of legislation that Equality California and their allies in the legislature, and Equality California dominates in California, right? It's a radical LGBT group. And it's interesting, I think, the ages, because what they were saying was they wanted to pass this statute that would no longer mandate reporting in the sex offender registry if a homosexual man 10 years older than a child rapes this child. And of course, statutory rape is a significant crime. And they're saying, well, in the name of equality, we don't want to force judges to enroll all these people in the sex offender registry. Then look at the ages for this private, invitation-only LGBTQ safe space web hangout that they're peddling to the children in Santa Clara County. They're talking about 13-year-old children to 25-year-old adults coming together. Something fishy is going on here. Parents need to get to the bottom of it, and I think a lot of investigations need to be done here, and nefarious characters need to be exposed.
Talk about that. We got about 50 seconds left. Talk about this lack of transparency that seems to be the norm for LGBTQ activists.
Yeah, and I think it's part of the broader problem, Duke, is that this is a very nefarious agenda. And it goes back all the way to the start of these radical sexual education programs and the sexualization of children. If you go back and look at the roots of this, it started in communist Hungary under the Bela Kun regime. They thought it was a way to break down the family and morality. Then the disgusting pervert Alfred Kinsey, who was responsible for the rape and sexual torture of hundreds, maybe thousands of little children, some as young as 5 months old. He said they were climaxing, these little babies that they were molesting and raping, and that therefore children were sexual from birth and they needed to be basically educated into this radical sexuality as soon as possible. Kindergarten. This stuff is crazy, Duke, but when you dig in, you realize this is absolute evil.
Shocking. It's another great story about a horrible situation in California. And the mom is right. Get your kids out now. Thanks, Alex.
I'm back, and it's time for some real education. Today, it's oui as we look at the work of Jean-Baptiste Carpeaux, who was a French sculptor and painter who lived and worked during the Second Empire under Napoleon III, and who was inspired by Michelangelo's works. We're looking specifically at Carpeau's Ugolino and His Sons, a sculpture made in the middle of the 19th century. The sculpture was inspired by Dante's Inferno and is actually a derivation from Canto 33. And if you want to see Ugolino and His Sons in person, you just have to go to the Met in New York City.
Yeah, and show the picture, Mike. The sculptor Carpeaux, who was one of the most important sculptors of the 19th century, this particular statue actually won a award, first prize award at a world fair for sculpture. So a very important picture and as a sculpture. And as Katie mentioned, this statue is in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in Manhattan. I've seen it there many times. It really is quite arresting. And if you watched the Dr. Duke show, you may remember a few weeks ago we did a sculpture of Laocoon, right? That great ancient story, sculpture that was dug up in the Renaissance about a priest of Troy and his two sons being swallowed up by snakes. And if you go back to the image, you will see this beautiful tangle of bodies. And the story requires telling. Who is Ugolino, the father there? You can see the father gnawing his very fingers, and his children of various ages clinging to him after they've been locked and bolted into a dungeon where they are being starved to death. It's a horrible story that appears first in Dante's Divine Comedy, 1265 to 1321. Dante wrote this about 1300 or so. And in one of the very lowest levels of hell, the 32nd canto of Dante's Inferno, right at the very bottom, where betrayers of family are actually punished. It's a very serious, one of the most serious sins in all of the Divine Comedy. We hear the story of Bishop Roger, and Count Ugolino, who you just saw there. And the story goes that the two of them were partners in crime. They conspired against other people. They conspired against the other political party of Florence. They caused a lot of trouble. And when they both had achieved their evil end, Bishop Roger betrayed Count Ugolino. He turned on his partner and locked Ugolino and his sons in a tower dungeon. Take a look again. And so there is the moment when Dante tells the horrifying story. One by one, the children died, one by one. One of his children even went to the father and said to him, "Daddy, Daddy, eat me." Seeing the sorrow in the father's face, the absolute helplessness of Count Ugolino to do anything for his children. And that's the moment that Dante captured really well, and Carpo captures it here beautifully. Those children clinging to their father, and it's not even he's gnawing his fingers, but he's not gnawing them out of hunger, which you would think. He's gnawing them out of absolute grief of the fact that he is their dad and he can do nothing for them. And the sculpture work here is fantastic. All of was one solid block of marble, and out of it he carves this tangled, horrifying, it's almost kind of an anti-Pietà, isn't it? This horrible story of sin and death. What happened was, in the lowest levels of hell, it's ice, not fire, right? The sinners are frozen, they're not burned. And what happens is that there are two heads sticking up out of the ice. Everything from neck down is frozen. One head is the head of Ugolino, and right here is the head of Roger, right? And in hell forever, Ugolino has gnawed through the skull of Roger and is eating his brains. When Dante and Virgil get down there, they see the starved to death Count Ugolino chewing on the brain pan of his enemy, the man who locked him away, that is. And it's a hideous, horrible lesson that Dante here's the description of it when he first sees them. "I saw two shades frozen in a single hole, packed so close, one head hooded, the other one. The way the starving devour their bread, the soul above had clenched the other with his teeth where the brain meets the nape." And we also have a short passage of what Ugolino suffered when his children, according to the Inferno, Dante's Inferno, when his children called out to him. "Father, our pain," they said, "will lessen if you eat us. You are the one who clothed us with this wretched flesh. We plead for you to be the one who strips us away." How much harder must that have been for the father to have those children offering themselves to him to sustain his own life? It's a horrible situation and a great piece of sculpture.
And that wraps up the week and our first Friday show. As always, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And if you have a question to help us kick off next Friday's first Q&A, visit freedomproject.com/askduke or send us a message on social media. Now, since that was so depressing, we're going to leave you with a fun fact to share with your family this weekend. Since it was the NFL draft recently and we talked French today, did you know, or do you know, that there is one NFL team that uses a plant as its logo? Can you name said NFL team?
The Fleur de Lis of the New Orleans Saints?
You probably looked it up ahead of time. Anyway, it is the New Orleans Saints and the Fleur de Lis.
Which is another word for lily. Isn't that pretty?
Flower. The
that's right.
Lily.
And that's very, very Bayou, very Cajun. And that's a Friday, people. Thank you for watching. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, let the good times roll, okay? Okay.